We will make it through. Worst case, I'll take a break in the middle of it. Guys, what's up? This is McAllister's podcast. I'm your host, as always, Coleman McAllister. Got another super solo live stream episode today. So if you guys got any questions, any comments, anything, make sure to drop them in the chat. Had to talk about we got a couple things to talk about today, but I mainly wanted to talk about the thing that everyone's talking about right now, I guess hopping on that bandwagon, is the recent shooting at the White House Correspondents Dinner that happened. I'm actually not sure when this happened. Not last night. It must have been the night before that happened. And it was weird. I had like a weird day personally. Like I was like dealing with like fallout stuff from my old job, and like it was just a stressful day, and so like I really just like tuned out everything. And then Dave Smith, who's like really the only political podcast I listen to anymore, he dropped a video talking about the DC shooting, and it was weird because I had seen this meme earlier that day. It was pretty funny. It was that scene in Titanic at the end where like it's just a camera POV and you just walk through the entire Titanic, right? And the meme was like, the Secret Service when you are trying to shoot Trump, which was funny. But like I kind of just assumed that it was an old meme from like back in the assassination attempt, and I didn't really think anything of it. And then later that day, he posted that episode, Dave Smith, talking about how there's a DC shooting. I'm like, oh shit, there actually was a shooting. So I've done most of the research this morning. I'm going to it fairly blind. I haven't heard too much about like the takes and like, whatever conspiracy theories or, just theories in general about what people have about this. It seems that the suspect is he wrote some kind of letter or was upset, like very clearly upset about what's happening with Trump. And justifiably so. I think there are a lot of reasons to be mad at Trump, especially this time around, with how the war in Iran alone, I think outshines, or not in a positive sense, but it overcasts everything positive that's ever come out of his two administrations. So, whatever political party this individual subscribed to, or if he even did, I think there's room all around for people to be upset about what's going on with Trump. But I did want to talk today about my theory with, really this assassination attempt and really any other assassination attempt that's happened over the course of the last couple years. I'm not really sure about Charlie Kirk, although because I'm not sure if the police were regarding that, or if that was, I guess either way, that's sponsored by the state, right? Because if it was a university that is intertwined with the state as well as the police department, so it was by no means private security. But I think it's very easy to look at these things and say, oh hey, this is the deep state trying to murder Trump. Thomas Crooks, there's all this information on him that isn't public, so he obviously must be working with the government. Because Charlie Kirk was potentially critical of Israel, they, did a hit on him. And I don't think any of these things, I shouldn't say it's impossible that they're true, but I think it's very unlikely that they're true. The thing that I think is there are really two commonalities that I find with these situations regarding Trump's. Let's just focus on Trump's assassination attempts violence around these situations. One, I think there's a very understandable, not justified by any means, but there's a very understandable anger coming from a lot of Americans, especially young ones, who are dissatisfied with like I said previously, not only dissatisfied with this administration, but I mean, there's been a certain side of the aisle that has been fed this information that we are literally witnessing Hitler. That Trump is literally Hitler. That he is literally a fascist. Now, I think if you were to look at Trump and his policies, he is far more a communist akin to socialism than a fascist. The trademark of fascism, from what I understand, is like utilizing industries to exert power on others. And it doesn't really seem like that's the case. Everything that I've seen out of the Trump administration is a force of government, an increase of government. And that is far different from fascism. That is more akin to communism, socialism especially, when you give power to the state in order to equalize things. And, it has the same result as what happens when you institute socialism. But regardless, when there is a certain side of the aisle that is fed this information that Trump is Hitler, Trump is the new Hitler, whatever. And this is over a decade. This messaging has, probably persisted today, especially with the stuff in Iran. I'm sure there's people who are saying that, but I think this is just a recipe for disaster. Of course, you were going to find at least a handful of people who are going to take violent means, take matters into their own hands, and do violent things. Now, I think it's very easy. I've talked about this before in the podcast. I think it's very easy for people when they're theorizing about what happens, quote unquote conspiracy theories around these events, is very easy to start from the conclusion and work your way back. I think a lot of times people will say, "Oh, Trump is being shot at. There are attempts on his life," and then they work backward from that. And they think, "Oh, why would people want this? Oh, because of X, Y, Z," and then so that means that the deep state's involved. That means that these actors are tied to the deep state, etc. And I don't really buy any of this. I've never really bought into this. I've never bought into the idea that Thomas Crooks is, or I should say, was this government person. I should say, that he was a psyop, or that the government manipulated him into doing this. I think with the Butler assassination attempt, probably the strongest case to be had that was something of a deep state thing was that Biden allowed Trump less Secret Servicemen. He actually didn't. RFK, he didn't allow any Secret Servicemen. But again, I don't think that's intentional. I don't think that's intentional in terms of having the outcome of an assassination attempt. I think it's more so just, hey, this is my political enemy. Why would I give him more protection than needs to be? And fair enough. Not even fair enough, but that's just that's how it works, right? If you're the guy in office, or Biden was a corpse, so the people who were running the government at that point, they obviously don't want that to happen. And there's something to be said about it's really surprising at this point that Trump hasn't hired private security. I don't know if there's something with his position where he's not allowed to do that or whatnot, but even at the Butler thing, you're telling me that this guy who's very wealthy is not able to hire private security that would probably be better than the Secret Service, or at the very least, how the Secret Service has handled these circumstances. It seems pretty obvious to me that it would be pretty easy to find that. I guess this leads into my second point on what I surmise what is actually going on, which I think ultimately at the end of the day, this is purely government incompetence. I think when people go down these rabbit holes of conspiracies, they are giving the government way too much credit. Let's look at what's happened with DEI. And before I get into this is not me saying that I think women or people of color or whatever minority group is targeted, or I should say an attempt to be bolstered in these positions. I don't think that they are automatically less than otherwise because of those traits. That is not what I'm saying at all. I don't believe that. That being said, I think when you have initiatives for hiring people into these positions that stem not from ability, but from a certain profile that is not a part of ability, right? That is a recipe for disaster. If you have that culture that is bred over time, over a decade, at the very least from the Biden era, probably before that, this probably started in the Obama era for sure, to some extent at least. Of course you're going to have less incompetence. Like if I had a business, let's take it from the other side of the aisle. Let's say I'm a racist, and people have called me that before. Truly a racist. I know I make jokes, but like a true racist. Like I truly looked at people who looked and were different from me, and I said that they're less than me, or I felt that they were less than me. Let's say I was really that person, and I had a business, and I was like, okay, I'm going to start this business, but I'm only going to hire white men. And it doesn't, like, if I have candidates that are other than that may be more qualified, I'm just going to ignore that because I'm a racist, I want purity, whatever, XYZ. And somebody's going to clip that up for sure. And, I decide to operate my business that way. My business is not going to operate as well as someone who does the opposite of that, who's like, okay, I'm not going to look at your orientation, how you identify yourself, racially, religious, whatever. I'm going to purely judge you based on your skill level, your ability. And that business is going to succeed far more than my business, undoubtedly. I think that's just another example of why free market capitalism is just better on face value than like this system, right? But anyways, my point is when you have all these government institutions operating off of that, you're obviously going to breed incompetence. You're going to breed a lack of skill. Because when you institute something like DEI, you throw that out the window because of the example I just gave. And on top of that, you have to think about where the government is at now, where the popularity is at now. People are not, jumping on the boat to go fight in Iran, right? Like the whole, at least in my generation, the whole culture is, being worried about having a draft and being like, I'm going to dodge the draft. And I probably would too. Like, there's no incentive for people to join these government programs. Even cops, nobody wants to be a cop. Like, nobody wants to be in these positions because they all recognize how fucking corrupt, not only corrupt, but how just inadequate these government agencies are. So I think it's way more likely that we have bred, or that I shouldn't say we, that the government has bred this culture of incompetence. And we can see this time and time again through these assassination attempts. Like I said, I'm going to this fairly blind, and I was listening to a little bit of the Dave Smith episode. I decided not to listen to the whole thing, just a little bit of it before I started. But from what I understand, based on that, it was pretty easy for him to be in that situation. There were not a lot of guardrails set in place. And people can think, I think people will look at that and say, oh, well, the government intentionally did that, or the Secret Service intentionally did that in order to have a hit on Trump. Incompetence, Democratic Party. No, I don't believe that's the case. Is it potentially a result of the Democratic Party with the DEI stuff? You can maybe argue that. I think just pinning it all on the Democratic Party is ridiculous. Because what has the Trump administration really done to alleviate that? I know they've taken out DEI in like the military, but like, it's one thing to declare that they're going to do it. It's another thing to like be like, okay, we're going to let people go and then we're going to hire new people. Like, I just don't believe that is actually happening. I think it's just a culture that's been bred from this. But look, I think this is the obvious thing, is that they're just incompetent. And I think the reason why this guy was able to get to this point, that happened the other night with the Correspondents Dinner, and I think the reason that Thomas Crooks was able to get a shot off was because the Secret Service didn't intentionally do these things, but they just suck at their jobs. I think it's like Occam's razor, right? Like, I just think that's the most likely outcome. Like, I think the simplest outcome is the most likely. Like, I'm sorry, I don't see a lot of evidence. And it would come out, right? Like, in this day and age of the internet, like, I feel like there would be some semblance of like hardcore evidence that these things are part of a bigger plot. But I just don't believe that. And also, like, why would the deep state want to, pop Trump now? I feel like this is the event that has proved my theory, beyond a reasonable doubt, more than anything. Is like, why would the deep state work against Trump at this point? Maybe he's not popular, so that could be a reason. Maybe that's a possibility. But he's doing everything that the deep state wants. He is pushing this war in Iran that Israel's been pushing for decades, and now they're finally getting it. Like, what reason is there to cap Trump at this point? To kill him? There's no reason. There's no reason for the deep state to do that. So, I think at the end I think this just goes to show that this is government incompetence. No one was let go in the military. They were positioned elsewhere. Yes. I'm not educated on that, but I would without a doubt think that that's the case. Because again, you have to think like, these spots are not being filled. There aren't like what I was saying earlier with like the lack of popularity in these government positions. Like, there's not a line out the door of people who want to join these organizations. Like, they're desperate for people. Every government position is like, please, like they're like sending out flyers like, please be a cop, like all that, right? Like, it's crazy to think that we are in a point where that's actually happening, that like they're actually letting go people. They're actually doing something like what that business would do, would be like, okay, we're going to hire people, we're going to determine who's the best. If you're not the best, we're going to fire you. Like, the government's not doing that. Do you still not understand we are in a uniparty? Yes, I agree. Maybe you're talking to the other guy, but like, essentially, yeah. It's the state versus the people. I've said this forever. I think Trump and Biden were on the same team. Okay. Enough of that. That's my theory. Basically just me saying that I think that not Democrats, I think the whole conspiracy theory thing is kind of just bullshit. Democrats said they would attack Iran as well. Clinton, Biden, Kamala all said that Iran is the biggest problem when attacked if they needed to. Yeah, Clinton and Biden didn't do that, though. Would Kamala have done it? Probably. But again, I think you're just playing politics at that point, and we're not about that here. Okay, moving on. So something I thought that was kind of funny and interesting that I thought maybe I would give my 2 cents on is this whole thing with Afroman. Whoever thought, in what reality, I mean, I guess people said this about Trump too, but like, in what reality do we live in where like Afroman is going to be potentially a serious candidate option, potentially for the Libertarian Party? Now, the Reason magazine, I don't remember what this was from exactly, but like what I think it's called The Reason, or just Reason Interviews or something. They put out this podcast episode with Afroman. Not really a huge fan of them. They've from what I understand, they have done some really kind of cruddy things for the Libertarian Party. Again, I don't consider myself a libertarian, just a strict anarcho-capitalist, but if I'm going to be sympathetic to a party, it would be the Libertarian Party, definitely. But regardless of that, they did an interview with Afroman, and they kind of titled it I mean, I didn't get to the tail end of it, so maybe he revealed it at the tail end, but like, it didn't really seem to me that he was like gung-ho for the Libertarian Party. It was more so just that he wants to be president and he wants to unify everybody and all that. Now look, I think Afroman got fucked in court. Well, not in court. In court, he actually did a pretty good job, but he got fucked after this whole raid on his house, and then he put out an album using his freedom of speech, and he got fucked. Like, he just got fucked after that. And like, I think him winning that whole thing in court was like magnificent, was great. And look, I think in that interview, he actually touched upon some pretty like salient things, right? Like, you know, he was talking about how these different branches in government, like, they're not really, you know, you always think of like the cops and the judicial system and XYZ, right? You always think of them as like they're supposed to be separate in theory, and they never are. They're all friends. They all go to the same coffee, like the lawyers too. Like, they all go to the same, you know, they all get coffee from the same station, and like they all, you know, use the vending machine, right? Like this whole idea that they're actually separate is just not true. And I think that was one of the things in the interview that I think he actually hit upon really well, that I really liked. But look, I mean, no shade to Afroman. I'm a fan. I love his music. A fucking Colt 40. I think it's just called Colt 45. Colt 45 to zigzag. Like, that was my fucking anthem growing up. Like, years before I even started smoking weed, I fucking loved that song. And because it was just dirty, and it was edgy, and it was like, you know, growing up in like a small Christian town, like my friend who was a little bit of a rebel played me that. I'm like, holy shit, this is like, do not tell my parents I'm listening to this music, right? But like it's some great songs. Like I fuck with Afroman. You know, it's funny. I have a fellow rapper friend who I still think is the best rapper in Iowa, period. Even though he's like kind of pseudo retired. He did a live show recently, but hasn't put out music in a while. But he actually opened for Afroman. And so like that's kind of a cool, like, oh, like he actually met him and talked to him, and like he really, you know, obviously a cool guy. So no shade to him, but I wouldn't consider Afroman to be a serious political contender. I don't see him. I think one of two things would happen. Afroman isn't going to be the president. If he was the president, I think one of two things would happen. The most likely one he would very easily fall for the government psyop. You know, he would very easily fall in line. He would, like, when it's like a dog chasing cars, right? And then when the dog catches it, they don't know what the fuck to do with it. I think that would be Afroman. And he would, I think there are certain forces in that would steer him to do certain things that, like, just wouldn't be good for people, wouldn't be good for Americans. Because, you know, he had this, like, when I was listening to the interview, he had this very like child. I'm not trying to throw shade, but like he had this very childish view of the government, and just, or not even the government, this childish view of like what the government should be. You know, it kind of vocalizing like the minarchist view, where it's like, I want the government to be smaller. I want people to just get along. Like, these are like he talked about it like the way that like a 10-year-old would talk about it. How if they were like, what do you want to do to be president? They would be like, I want everybody to get along. I don't want these things to happen. I want to hold people accountable, etc., etc., etc. And this is just, I mean, it's not really in line with like pure libertarian ethics to be like, you know, to actually think that that's possible. I guess it's a thing of debate, but like there's a majority. I mean, there's at least a strong percentage of people who are leaning in that way, who think that like this is just a mess. Like, the government's never going to fix itself. The government's never going to get smaller. It's going to do everything but that. And the best way to a positive outcome is to dismantle it. And nothing about what he talked about was about that. But like, it just came across to me as like this childlike view on how he wants to do things. Again, I don't think he's a malicious guy. I think he's chill. I think he's great. I have no shade to throw against Afroman. I think, honestly, you know, and again, I think the interview title was misleading, implying that he was going to be a libertarian candidate. He never really specifically said that. He said that he liked Republicans, he liked Democrats, he liked libertarians, he wanted to get along with all of them. He never actually said that he was going to be he was going to run for presidency under the libertarian ticket. However, I think this, to summarize this, to get to my final point on this, I think the reason why this is so eerily similar to Trump's rising, the thing that Afroman and Trump both have in common is they are populist candidates. It's a popularity contest with both of them. You know, Trump, he didn't have bad rhetoric. Like he said things that were really empowering to people, and I was one of those people at one point in time, who like fell for the whole gambit, right? That he was going to drain the swamp, he was going to do all these things. But they were like, if you look back on it, it's like really low hanging fruit. It's like my example before, where you asked the 10-year-old, it's like, I'm going to drain the swamp. I'm going to make these things smaller. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And it sounds good to everyone, right? But like I said, when you get into that position, it's really hard to do that. Impossible in my mind. And I think the danger in someone like Afroman heading the Libertarian Party is that you kind of take the seriousness away from it. Now, has the Libertarian Party, you know, ever really been that serious? Maybe not. There have been some serious contenders. You know, do they actually end up getting a lot done? It's up for debate. Is the Libertarian Party like a liable future in terms of politics? It's up for debate. However, this is vermin supreme in my mind. You know, the guy that wore the boot, who was the Libertarian Party, like, I think it was like Wyoming or something. He was like the Libertarian Party candidate. And it was a big joke. It's like, this is the Libertarian Party. I think Afroman, but you know, there was a time, there was like a good like decade plus, right, where like you know, Spike Cohen, you know, I would even put, you know, Jim Jorgensen, she's really been disappointing, but I would even put her above like a lot, like especially the last candidate that they had. I would still put her above that, even though she was pretty bad on like the masking up and stuff. But you know, people who seemed serious, who were like really envisioned, like, if I get into power, like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and these things are going to be really good. Whether they would have actually, you know, who was the guy that from California that Joe had on. I can't remember his name, but like he was really good in pot. Like, you know, there's a lot of like serious candidates, and Afroman is the most unserious political candidate ever, potentially ever, from the Libertarian Party, if he actually decides to run that ticket. But this would just be, I think, for the Libertarian Party, this would just be a complete L, putting the L in libertarianism, because it would just be a populist candidate. People wouldn't vote for him based on, you know, what he actually has to say. It's like the Kanye vote, right? It's like, I'm going to vote for Kanye because he's Kanye. And we're not going to, like, does he actually have any substance to what he wants to do? No. But he's Kanye. Why wouldn't you vote for Kanye? And voting's bullshit anyways, so whatever. I just think it's something that, like, like if you're like a libertarian and you know, really want success for your party and you really want your ideas to flourish, this is not the move. This is not the move at all. Okay, let's move on. I wanted to talk a little bit today. I haven't covered him in a while because I've been pretty off social media for the most part. But you know, the governor election is coming up. The Iowa, well, all governors, but the one that matters to us, the Iowa governor, is coming up. And you know, I think I'll just say this off the bat. I think Rob Sand's going to win. My prediction. I think he's going to be the candidate that wins. I think you see this with, you know, I think there's like 5 different Republican candidates, none who you've heard of. And you have to remember, even though Kim Reynolds has had a successful 2 terms, she was handpicked. I can't remember the guy's name. Handpicked by the previous governor when he was promoted by Trump. And so, I mean, there is no like serious, there isn't a Rob Sand in the Iowa Republican Party right now. Rob Sand's the only Democrat candidate running. There's a lot of finances that are backed because of him. There's a lot of push towards Rob Sand. And look, him compared to Kim Reynolds, despite the things that I really disagree with him on, 100% better of a governor. I cannot, and we'll kind of get into this in the clip, but like, I cannot imagine him being as corrupt as that bitch is. I just can't imagine it. I could be disappointed. It's very possible, but I have a hard time believing that is possible with someone like Rob Sand. Now, so I mean that's like, look, I think overall he's a likable guy. I really don't like his Democratic policies. I really think some of the stuff he wants to do with like education and Medicare are a little draconian and would probably tank the Iowa economy. But despite that, like, I think him as a person, he's a nice enough guy. However, he put out this ad that was like very simplistic, to say the least. And let's just go over it. Let's just watch this. Let's just watch this shit.
Call me old-fashioned. I'd say stealing's bad. That's why I locked up corrupt public officials as a prosecutor. And as state auditor, I uncovered record amounts of misspent tax dollars. Insiders didn't like that, so they changed the law to make it harder for me to find your misspent tax money. That's bad too. As governor, I'll make jail time mandatory for public officials who misuse your tax dollars. Because stealing is still bad, and stealing from taxpayers should be unacceptable. Call me old-fashioned.
Now this is interesting. This is interesting. Stealing from the taxpayers is wrong. That's a very libertarian message. Odd. Look, I will say this about Rob Sand. I think what he did in terms of the misspending of government funds with the whole lottery thing was very good. He had a documentary about it. I haven't watched it, but that's a good thing. Like if you're gonna look at government officials, that's what they should do, right? Like that should be the minimum requirement. You know, if you're part of a group, the first thing you should do is make sure that group's in check, or else you're just a fucking hypocrite. Now there are a couple questions with this. How much of this will he actually be able to do? That's left to be seen. You know, he did do this thing as an auditor, so it's possible. I think he has more of a chance than Kim Reynolds, for sure. And there is an obvious problem with Kim Reynolds retroactively going like, hey, we're going to make it harder for this to happen, for these things to be audited. I think that's great that he wants to, that he did that, and that it seems like this is something he wants to do. However, from the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, free market capitalist perspective, it is very hard to ignore the fallacy that is jumping out, which is that he simplifies, and I shouldn't even say that he's doing it a disservice, but like I shouldn't even say that like simplifying it like this is bad, because it's true. Stealing is bad. I think the next logical thing to ask is, what is taxation? It's stealing. And his last bit where he said, you're stealing money from the taxpayers. Like, you're already stealing money from the taxpayers. So when you're going to frame things like this, saying stealing is bad, very libertarian message. Is he going to end taxation? No. In fact, he is more than likely going to increase it for things like Medicaid, for things like education, for government programs. He wants to put like he was bitching about how Kim Reynolds put $1 million into cancer research and how it's a mouse fart, and how he wants to pump more into that. And then when he was asked like, what's your actual plan? He didn't really give an answer. Because he doesn't have an answer. Because this is the problem with these Democratic types, is like they just rely on the system. Like they just rely on it to be like, yeah, stealing is bad, so we're going to keep stealing from you and make sure that it's not bad anymore. It's like it's already bad. The whole thing's already bad, dude. Yeah, stealing is bad. And you're running for a position where you're going to continue to steal. I watched this and it just made me cringe. And look, like if here's actually, I was just going to look this up. Is there any development on the Ian Roberts fraud? Because he did say he was going to tackle this. He was gonna open up an investigation into the Des Moines public schools. He said this in, I think, October of last year. Now, I've tried to give him some grace period, but it's been 6 months, 7 months, 6-7 months, and I'm looking right now. There are no articles, nothing to suggest that he has moved an inch on this. A very serious issue that we covered on this podcast, where this man was not even legally registered to work in this country and was around children and was making twice as much as any superintendent in the area, almost $300,000. And he fled from the police. And he's not going to move on that. Look, if I'm going to believe that he's actually going to clean up the corruption, I really hope he does. I want to think that he will. He's got to say something about this. It's been over 6 months. I know government's the slowest moving body in the world. And maybe this would be something that, if he became governor, he could maybe push for that more. I highly doubt it. You know why? Because there is a Democratic bias in the Des Moines public school system. There are DI initiatives. There is a clear bias in that organization. And it would not serve him to properly audit that organization. I haven't done a lot of research. I would be curious to see if anybody's actually followed up with him on that. Because, he was very stronghold about even starting in the first place. He got a request and he said it wasn't written. He wasn't done correctly. I mean, fine. Maybe that's true. And then after it was done correctly, he said, okay, we're going to do this. Okay, man, it's been 6-7 months. What's the news? What's the status on this? There's no way that this wouldn't have been covered if there were further developments in this fraud case. And if there aren't further developments after a 6-7 month period, maybe you should check in and say, hey, at least say we're working on it. That would be an article. The Des Moines Register would cover that. I think the most likely outcome is that he is going to do things for corruption, but he's going to do something in one particular direction. And he is going to steal your money to do it. Okay, last thing, and then we'll wrap up. I want to talk about this Michael movie. This movie about Michael Jackson. Now, I want to say off the bat, I have not seen this. I have not seen this film. So, I could be talking out of my ass with this. That's very possible. But something that I have found disturbing is the seemingly blind praise of this film. Despite the lack of the pedo allegations that were against Michael Jackson. Because, admittedly, the studios are put in a bind, right? Where they're okay, this guy was really influential, but he also did some really fucking shitty things with kids. How are we going to approach this? Apparently the answer is they're going to just do the first half and then, a sequel to be continued that they'll never actually put out, probably. Because, the only way you would be able to do it is if you just completely jumped over that whole series of events. Now, sure, I guess some of that's up for debate. The man's dead, so we can't really say whether that actually happened or not. But there's a lot of testimony and allegation to show that he probably was doing some really fucked up stuff. Now, I think it's appalling to me in this day and age. In Hollywood especially, where the whole Me Too DEI movement is still vibrant and strong, one of the few places it still is, that we would put out a movie like this without addressing that. And I could see some possibility where you kind of even do it in a way where it's you address it as a complex situation. Not to put him in the positive light necessarily, just say hey, this is a man who did do really bad things to children, but he also had a fucked up background that probably put him in a place where he was, disposed to doing that, where his past experiences and just his fame and wealth and power just put him in this position where, in a way it's kind of I shouldn't say understandable in the sense of it's permissible or that it's, okay, but, it's understandable to where he, why he would get to that point. The same as how, if a serial killer is abused by his mother horribly, or has a mental defect and or has a mental defect, and then he becomes a serial killer targeting women who are similar to his mother, you could understand, be okay, that's probably why he did that. It's not okay what he did, but it's probably, so the movie could have done something like that. It could have been honest. But what did they do? They just completely ignored it. This is the level, if you made a movie about O.J. Simpson, And you just started with this football career and then ended with the cancer or whatever the end of his life was. If he just omitted the main part, the main controversy of O.J. Simpson, which is that he killed his wife and her lover, that would be disingenuous. I think people would be upset. And I should say, I think there are people that are upset about this. Like, I think the Rotten Tomatoes reviews weren't very good. So some of the critics are, I think doing their due diligence. But, something like Letterboxd, like, it's crazy to me that, like Letterboxd is one of the most woke fucking movie review websites. And I know this is not... I know you can't, like, necessarily push, like, put how the audience reacts on that platform. I don't think there's a point where that isn't necessarily fair. However, if you go to What is a Woman, the Matt Walsh documentary, another movie I have not yet seen because I just can't stand Matt Walsh, honestly. He might have had some... it was one of those movies where, like, you kind of saw everything from it in the clips, so it's like, okay, do I really want to just rewatch all this? But like, in that time, I think he had a lot of good points, and like it was like a fair critique of that stuff. Letterboxd, if you go to that movie, it doesn't exist. It does not exist. It either doesn't, it doesn't exist. Like, you search it, and there's like a little thing that says like, this movie is unable to blah blah blah. Let's actually look it up. I'm actually curious what the logic is behind that. But this is a movie critiquing a ideology, and Michael is a movie about a pedophile. What was my password? This is really great content. Is that it? No. Okay. You know what? Oh, hey, it worked. Okay. So, okay, well, they do have a page for it. Did they change? Can you do... Aha, here we go. Here we go. Due to moderation concerns, reviews for this title are hidden. They remain visible on members' profiles with the exception of those removed for violating our community policy. So, talking about a movie like that is a violation of community policy. But not talking about the pedophilia allegations against this man, like, that's okay. And really, they shouldn't block it either way. But like, come on, man. Like, you're gonna praise this guy. You're gonna see nothing wrong with this. Like, you're just gonna give this a good review. And maybe it is on its face a good movie. And like, I feel like I'm just being a woke asshole talking about this, but like, look, like, if you're going to intentionally make a piece of media depicting someone's biography and you're going to intentionally omit things in order to paint them in a positive light, that's fucked up. That's wrong. If you made a movie about Joe Biden and you omitted all the shitty things he did with his daughter from The Diary, which we've covered on this podcast, things with, his racist remarks and just the policies that he implemented on the war on drugs, you kind of did a shitty job, dude. You kind of did this intentionally to an extent. Joe Biden is probably a little more understandable. Like, that could just be ignorance. But everybody knows about these allegations of Michael Jackson. So, yeah, I'm sorry. If you're going to make a movie about Michael Jackson, you're going to intentionally leave out the worst part. I'm good on that. I'm not going to watch or support that. Okay, that's the episode. stay tuned. We're going to be doing more stuff later this week. I am for sure going to do a tier list celebrating the month of women. Women Month. Because we value our women. Well, some of them. We're gonna rank them. Not all of them. Some of them are kind of shady. But we're gonna do that, I think, Thursday. And tomorrow we may do a gaming live stream. We'll see what's going on. So thanks for everybody tuning